Al Jazeera just keeps taking one hit to its credibility after another. It's only been a few weeks since the CEO of Al Jazeera America, this of course the channel that was supposed to gain a foothold in the United States and do more in-depth international journalism, but has suffered from abysmally low ratings. The CEO has resigned under all kinds of criticism, and lots of other journalists have left disgusted with Al Jazeera America. There were allegations in a lawsuit by a former employee about anti-Semitism and racism and sexism at the channel and discrimination against women who were supposedly being pulled off projects, all of which Al Jazeera has denied, but the resignation of the CEO certainly gave credence to the notion that this place was kind of in chaos. Well, now a remarkable piece in the New York Times by the former Cairo bureau chief, Mohammed Fahmy, for Al Jazeera English, another spin-off of the channel. The whole thing, as you know, is owned by the royal family of Qatar. And this guy, Fahmy, says that he could go to jail in Egypt because of a series of mistakes made by Al Jazeera. He's already been tried as a member, alleged member of the Muslim Brotherhood. This, of course, is the group that was behind former President Mohamed Morsi. It's now been banned by the Egyptian government. And Fahmy spent more than 400 days in detention on what he says are trumped-up charges. He was his conviction was overturned on appeal. Now he faces a retrial. Some of this gets complicated, but I'll tell you what's not complicated. What's not complicated is what Mohammed Fahmy says about the way Al Jazeera was run. On the one hand, he kind of got caught up in this dispute between the Egyptian government and his employer over whether or not he could even broadcast there, or whether the Arabic service could broadcast. But let's talk about the journalism for a moment. Listen to what he writes in this New York Times column. He says that he had concerns that Qatar, the country, the family that owns the channel, was compromising our journalism. Against my objections, the Arabic station, which was banned, redubbed our English language news packages with inflammatory commentary. So think about that for a moment. Here's a guy who's trying to do what he thinks is a fair job. He views himself as a journalist. He worked for Al Jazeera. He believed in what Al Jazeera had to offer. And somebody in the home country is taking his reports and those of his colleagues and is dubbing it and making it more biased and more inflammatory. That gets at the heart of biased and distorted journalism, the very thing that Al Jazeera has tried to fight against. Fahmy goes on to say that his bosses neglected to tell him that they were providing the Muslim Brotherhood activists in Egypt with video cameras. They were giving Muslim Brotherhood members video cameras and paying them to take footage, which they would then broadcast without explaining where the footage came from. And this is not only deceptive, but if you're trying to operate in a country, the country of Egypt, which has banned the Muslim Brotherhood as a terrorist organization, and then you're hiring members of the Muslim Brotherhood, according to this lawsuit that he is filing, that Fahmy is filing, to gather your footage, you're kind of almost deputizing them as journalists. I just don't get it. So it's little surprise that he blames Al Jazeera for the fact that he spent all this time in an Egyptian jail, that he could serve a prison term if he is convicted again. And he says he was duped. He was duped by the promises of Al Jazeera. And he says those claims, those noble-sounding claims, were nothing but a glossy whitewash. Well, I don't know how many hits this channel and its credibility can take. Now, it's hired some good journalists. The ratings are just barely registering. I mean, about 30,000 people in America are watching Al Jazeera. But when one person after another comes out and says it's not living up to its ideals, it's betraying people, it's discriminating against staffers, it's not practicing good journalism, and in this case is actually jeopardizing the safety of its former Cairo bureau chief, those kinds of accusations are hard to recover from.